Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan John joining you for this edition of Nate at 8. We just got off air a little bit while ago. We were tracking a tornado warning in the very northeastern portion of Columbiana County. Went until 8:15, so we got off air, and now we're here at Nate at 8. So I apologize for it being a bit late, but we are here, and we're going to be tracking that line of, unfortunately, some strong severe thunderstorms moving in the area. That was an individual cell moving into Columbiana County. That line still anticipated to impact us a little bit later going into the overnight hours. Closer to about 10 o'clock to midnight, I think, is really the good time frame between 10 o'clock and midnight by the time it not only reaches us, but moves through the area. So the leading up to midnight, still anticipating that line of some strong severe thunderstorms to move into the region. So without further ado, let's jump into things, shall we? So for this edition of Nate at 8 coming up, well, more thunderstorms tonight and for tomorrow. And yes, unfortunately, the potential for severe weather and flooding is there during this time frame. Now, once we get past tomorrow afternoon, we're noticing the storm's likely tapering off. We're likely drying up at the very end of the day tomorrow. And from there, we thankfully don't look back. We're likely dry for not only the Friday, but even through early next week, maybe through the middle of next week. So thankfully, we can string together a few and quite possibly a handful of days with dry conditions. So we're looking ahead and certainly going to be dealing with some much more quiet weather in that regard, but we will be watching at the same time temperatures are really ramping up, so we can have some excessive heat concerns and heat safety concerns during that dry stretch. And it is that is certainly something to not take lightly, but it is nice that at least with these recent rounds of torrential downpours that we do get into a dry stretch and with not only dry weather but more sunshine likely arriving for the weekend and then continuing going at least into early next week. Our temperatures today, a lot of 80s, didn't have too many rain cooled temperatures. There wasn't a whole lot of precipitation around going throughout the day. It was much more hit or miss. What you may have noticed is still just unbearably humid, isn't it? Unbearably humid. These dew points near 70 plus, and that's just that range where you almost just start to instantly sweat as you step outside the door. So a lot of moisture, unfortunately, for these showers and thunderstorms to tap into. So anticipate some heavy downpours to continue not only tonight, but even tomorrow. By the time we end the day tomorrow, dew points will start to drop. So not as humid tomorrow night, especially into Friday. Notice it picks back up. So by Sunday this weekend, after noticing some relief from the humidity Friday and going into Saturday, by Sunday, it's likely just as humid as it is now. So unbearably humid by Sunday. And I think a lot of next week is unbearably humid as well. So there's some relief here from this humidity near term. But what we're going to notice for a lot of this stretch here as we go over the next week is a lot of what we're feeling this evening. Unfortunately, just unbearably humid conditions that will be in place, which is an issue once we see temperatures start to pick up and likely reach in the 90s. And that's where the heat index can reach into the 100s. And that's where the excessive heat concerns come into play. Austin, good evening. I'm glad there's no more tornado warning. Today was another hot, muggy day. Rained here very quickly around 5, which was surprising. And yeah, not too much precipitation overall, Austin, right? We had that some rounds of precipitation, but overall, fairly mostly dry day, just certainly warm and very humid what we had in place. So our severe thunderstorm warning was just here recently issued for not our area quite yet, but that does include Holmes County and Amish country, a lot of Coshocton County, Muskingum County, including areas near Zanesville. So we did have that severe thunderstorm warning that was issued just west of us, just west of that I-77 corridor. So these storms are getting closer to us. And again, once we get closer to about 10 o'clock and then continuing on to midnight is when we'll likely notice this line move through the area. So here closer to 9:30, in about an hour, it's going to be moving through those locations of Muskingum, Coshocton, and then eventually between 10 o'clock and midnight, likely through our area. So there's that line continuing, and unfortunately pack a punch as it makes its way through central Ohio. And as it's maintained its strength, we've seen that watch, that severe thunderstorm watch, now extended further east into our area. So here's a rough estimate of time of when we're going to be watching this progress east through our area. And again, I think a general timeline is closer to 10 o'clock and then upwards of midnight. It's a rough estimate, but between that time frame is likely when we'll be watching this not only move in our area, but through our area as well. So the northern panhandle likely getting closer to 11 o'clock midnight, and for locations towards I-77, 10 o'clock is likely closer to the arrival time. Between those two time frames is likely when we'll see this progress east into our area. A lot of storm reports coming in with this line. As we look back further towards our west, we've had some observed wind gusts in excess of 50 miles per hour. Again, this was observed wind gusts in excess of 50 miles per hour. So those are still some gusty winds reported with this line. We've had a lot of wind damage reports as well, a lot of tree down reports. And the unfortunate side to this, as it makes its way into our area, is that we have that saturated soil in place from these rounds of heavy rain, and that can often make it easier for these winds to topple trees. So we see these trees fall with that saturated soil and gusty winds, and it can yield a little more trees fall and compared to if our soil was dry, and that can yield then more power outages in spots. So that's the unfortunate side as we watch this line move into the area for tonight, is that saturated soil that's in place for many areas in our region. And that can make it, unfortunately, easier for those winds to topple those trees over. And then, of course, those can fall on power lines, and we could deal with some power outages. There's already quite a few power outages across Indiana and areas that have been affected in Ohio. PowerOutage.us has numbers right now in Indiana of 189,997, and in Ohio, 139,280. So already quite a bit in terms of numbers from Indiana and Ohio. Again, that's mainly Western Ohio. It's already been impacted from this line. It's just now moving into the central part of Ohio and will be impacting us as we lead up to midnight. That severe thunderstorm watch in effect till 3 a.m. But again, I don't think this is going to be over us at 3 a.m. It's going to be past us at that point. But that severe thunderstorm watch does remain in effect now until 3 a.m. Drew says, okay, Nate, thanks for the update. You're welcome. How are you doing tonight? I'm doing well. How are you? When the severe storms roll in. So I think we already got to that for you, Drew, about 10 o'clock to midnight or so in that time frame between 10 and up leading up to midnight. Just caught what you mentioned. Thanks. How much rain should we expect and how bad will it get? So rainfall amounts is going to be these are quick moving. These storms have been moving upwards about 50 miles per hour. So some heavy downpours, but it moves quick. So, we'll get that initial blast of some heavy rain, but thankfully it's moving quick out of the area. So not likely going to pile up a whole lot of of excessive rain with this line as it moves through. It's less of a flooding concern with this line, and certainly more of that damaging wind concern with this line. These have been moving upwards about 50 miles per hour. So it's moving quick. So yes, there'll be some heavy downpours, but it moves fast. So it should keep flooding concerns low with this line, and more so of the concern with the high wind gusts that are possible with this line, which have been observed still into central Ohio in excess of 50 miles per hour. And those winds are certainly high enough with the saturated soil in place to be able to bring some trees down. And of course, those can fall on power lines, and then we can get some power outages in spots. So unfortunately, it is possible to deal with some power outages and down trees as this line does make its way through our area as we go through the night. Dan says, thanks. You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Joe, good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Is Stephenville getting hits? Yes, Emily. I think, all of the area, all of us tuning in. I don't think there's going to be a single location that's not impacted by this line. This is a widespread area. Again, going back and getting a better view of this, you'll notice this line is extending from northern Ohio all the way to southern Ohio. This line's extending across the entirety of Ohio, so all of us are likely going to see this line impact us. Now, that being said, you can have portions of this line with higher wind gusts with respect to other portions. So we can see a little worse impacts in spots, but I think all of us are going to be just dealing with some gusty winds in general as this line moves through. Yes, some heavy downpours, but it's moving fast. So it does keep thankfully, that flooding risk low with the line, and more of the concern with some high winds with this line. Now, we'll be watching in the wake of this as we do go throughout the night, and especially for tomorrow, that potential for localized flooding is unfortunately still there. It is still there, as we can deal with some rounds of showers and thunderstorms later tonight, and especially for tomorrow. I think the flooding concern can be a bit greater for actual daytime tomorrow. So there's a look at Futurecast. There's that line moving through our area leading up to midnight. Notice we get past that, and we still can have some showers and thunderstorms persist, but the severe risk will subside. We're not anticipating the severe risk to carry over into Thursday morning. It's more with this line moving through the area up to midnight. Once we get past that, again, some showers and thunderstorms can linger into Thursday morning. I don't think there's a whole lot of activity, but we can have some continue into Thursday morning, and then it will pick back up throughout the day Thursday. And I think especially into Thursday afternoon, this would be then the time where we can deal with an additional strong to severe thunderstorm. What we would see is more isolated with respect to tonight. What we would see for on Thursday would be more isolated with respect to tonight. We could still see some high wind gusts within a storm or two. It's possible. That would be the primary concern as we go into Thursday afternoon, would be just some high winds again, if any thunderstorm does become severe. And this is where we can get some of those rounds of some heavy rain. So I think this is our next time frame where I would say that flooding risk is going to be, in terms of the highest time of concern, I think this would be it into Thursday afternoon again, as we can deal with some rounds of heavy rain. And that's the issue we'd be looking for, is that training effect, that continuous, those storms continuously tracking over the same location, that can yield those flooding concerns, unfortunately, again, for Thursday. And I think specifically into Thursday afternoon, when we have those heavier downpours present with thunderstorms. So I think that's the next time period to keep a very close eye on it. Yes, it's still possible to deal with localized flooding later tonight and through the entirety of tomorrow, but I think the time of highest concern is going to be into the afternoon hours on Thursday. By Thursday evening, we're likely drying up. So by the time we end the day tomorrow, we are drying up, and from there, we're even seeing a decrease in our cloud cover, decrease in humidity, and those temperatures fall back to around 60 degrees going into Friday morning, and we'll likely spot some areas of fog developing for Friday morning. So we'll notice so much quieter and more cooler, comfortable conditions arriving for Friday morning, more pleasant conditions in for the daytime on Friday. Something else to note for tomorrow, we will have some pretty gusty winds just in general outside of even any thunderstorms. We'll have a breeze in place, wind gusts upwards about 25 miles per hour. So nothing real high, no real high wind gusts, I should say, but it'll be certainly breezy for tomorrow. Wind speeds about 25 miles per hour is what the wind gusts will likely be. Sustained about 15 miles per hour. So certainly will be a breeze in place for Thursday. Thursday night is when those winds will diminish, when we get that decrease in the cloud cover and humidity, and our temperatures again fall back to more comfortable levels. And by the time we get into Friday morning, and that can allow for some areas of fog to develop then for Friday morning's commute. So looking ahead, so to sum it up for you, potential impacts as we do look ahead. So high winds, localized flooding. That is what we're watching for as we do look ahead into Thursday. Tonight, those high winds can be a bit more widespread. I think for tomorrow, it's isolated. It's more isolated. So I think to sum it up, really, tonight, a higher concern for high winds, and tomorrow, a higher concern for localized flooding with respect to the two. That's what we're watching for as we go through Thursday. Again, Thursday, the emphasis will be in the afternoon hours. Tonight, the emphasis is leading up to around midnight. So early tonight, a little bit past midnight, that's the time frame. Later tonight into early tomorrow morning, there's likely a lot of this precipitation will likely be even tapering off going into daybreak hours on early tomorrow morning. After that, it's not rain, but we will be watching for the weekend, early next week, excessive heat. We can talk about 100-degree plus heat index, highs in the 90s, those dew points in the 70s. That's a recipe to see it feel like it's 100 plus. So it's some dangerous heat possible, certainly by Sunday, and then continuing through at least Tuesday, maybe Wednesday of next week. We can string together a few, maybe even upwards of 4 days in a row with highs 90 plus, and we're likely not far from it Saturday. So maybe even a handful of days with those high temperatures 90 plus ahead for the weekend that will continue into early next week. So those are the potential impacts that we are watching for as we do look ahead. I know some of you may just be tuning in, so we'll go back, and of course, what we're really watching here near term tonight, our biggest area of concern, The biggest thing of concern is going to be this line of strong to severe thunderstorms. So that's what we're going to be watching moving into our area. Suzanne says, I see it breaking off. Do you think it will actually weaken a bit before it gets to our area? It should, Shelly, weaken some. Yes, it should be weakening some by the time it does reach us. It still can produce, though, some high wind gusts, but it should be weakening some by the time it does reach us. So we expect any more storms this weekend? Drew's asking, and no, we should be looking dry for the weekend. Again, at that point, our attention will turn more to the excessive heat concerns as it turns very humid by Sunday and it turns hot by Sunday. So especially by Sunday and then continuing through at least Tuesday of next week, the worries there is just the heat safety concerns, right? Just the excessive heat that we can have in place during that stretch. Do you think the severe thunderstorm watch will get canceled early? I do, Suzanne. I do think the watch will get canceled early. I don't foresee us having severe weather concerns up to 3 a.m. I don't think that's going to last till 3 a.m. I think, again, closer to midnight, our severe weather concerns should start to fall off. Even by then, I don't think it's going to continue up to 3 a.m. So, yes, I do think it's going to end up getting canceled early. Charlene says, good evening, Nate from New Manchester. Sure hope no severe winds. Prayers for those families in Ohio County, Marion County. Indeed, Charlene, thoughts and prayers continue to go to those impacted from the horrific flooding events of this weekend, and just horrible to see. And we're keeping a close eye on these storms as we go throughout the remainder of the night and as well as for tomorrow. Obviously, hoping that no more flooding concerns come to fruition. But unfortunately, they are there. Again, with this line moving through, it's certainly more of a severe weather concern than a flooding concern. Thankfully, these are moving fast. So while it produces a heavy rain, it doesn't remain over the same location long. These have been moving upwards about 50 miles per hour, this line. So it is not like this weekend. We saw that those storms develop and they did not move much at all, essentially remained where they developed. So you had that heavy rain just sitting over the same locations, and that yielded the areas of flooding that we had for this weekend. And thankfully, not the case what we're going to have tonight. This is moving very quickly as it makes its way east across Ohio and through the northern panhandle. Sandy says, hello from Wetzel County. What happened to 80-degree low humidity and dry weather? Not here, huh, Sandy? But Friday is a little more of that. It's a little more of that, Sandy, on Friday. By the time we get into the weekend, it starts to get hot Saturday. Not real humid, but it does start to pick up on Saturday, and it is real humid by Sunday. So I think Friday could be more of the taste of what you're wishing for there, Sandy. Once we get past Friday, though, it is going to start to turn hot and humid again for us on the weekend. Suzanne says, I've been tracking storms in the Severe Weather Team 9 mobile app. It's a good mobile app to have, gives you a heads up at when rain is heading for your location. Also will keep you updated any lightning strike near you or any watches issued or any warnings issued. Great tool to have on your mobile phone. That's Severe Weather Team 9 mobile app. Great app to have, a very handy tool to be had as we do extend into not only tonight, but just in general. It's a good tool to have on a daily basis. I've just been reading up on some notes from the National Weather Service office of Pittsburgh and some of their thoughts on this line making its way into the area. And the meteorologist there in National Weather Service office noting that for them in the weather office, they have increasing confidence that the line holds together well into the area. So they're showing results from their latest weather balloon launching. So we have a good amount of energy, it looks like, available for these storms, what we call CAPE, convective available potential energy, CAPE, 3,500 joules per kilogram. So yeah, that's a decent amount of CAPE. There's fuel, which is essentially fuel for these thunderstorms. So if we have a good amount of fuel in our area for these storms, it can help maintain them. So they're just giving those results that just came in from their latest sounding, which is a very handy tool for us as meteorologists as we get raw data from how our atmosphere conditions are. And one of those variables that we look at is that, like I mentioned, CAPE, which stands for convective available potential energy. It's a mouthful, but essentially it just means the fuel for these thunderstorms. You can think of it much like putting gas in your vehicle. It's similar. We've got, our atmosphere there, a good amount of gas in the engine, if you will. So a good amount of fuel for these thunderstorms, unfortunately, to hold together as they make their way into our area. So we're going to be continuing to watch that. Their estimated time was very similar to what we had. They were noting again closer to about 10 o'clock along I-77, like we mentioned, and then getting closer towards Wheeling at 11. So pretty similar timing to what we were mentioning. And the National Weather Service seems to agree with us there on the timing of this, getting closer to 10 o'clock and then continuing up to midnight. Again, I think by midnight, this line's out of our area. So I think it's still a good time frame to watch, starting at 10 o'clock for that I-77 corridor, and then continuing up to midnight. And then by midnight, it should be out of our area. And we should see that severe threat then fall off as we go into the remainder of the night. So just wanted to note some thoughts from the National Weather Service office in Pittsburgh. So we're still continuing to watch this line making its way into the area, moving through central Ohio and now starting to impact areas east central Ohio and again towards I-77 corridor. That's locations there into Tuscarawas County, Guernsey, Noble. We'll see it move into these areas getting closer to 10 o'clock. And then as we look towards the northern panhandle, getting closer to 11 o'clock, maybe even a little past 11. And then by midnight, I think this is out of our area. So we do have that watch in effect. That severe thunderstorm watch that is in effect until 3 a.m. But, I think this is going to be well out of our area by then. I don't think we have to wait up and worry until then. I think, again, by midnight, I think that this severe threat's going to be ending and that line's going to be out of our area. So, just want to keep weather still here over the next few hours. And then we get past that midnight mark and even up to that midnight mark, and the severe risk is going to start to subside. This has produced a lot of these storm reports looking back further to the west. You can see all those greens. That's just the high wind gusts registered, the wind damage icon there. That is just a lot of the wind damage reported across Indiana and Western Ohio. Poweroutage.us, in terms of reporting for power outages, we have updated numbers: 170,600 in Indiana, 154,572 customers tracked without power in Ohio. So this is leaving quite a few power outages in the wake of this line. And the unfortunate part for us is that as this does reach us, we have that saturated soil in place from these rounds of heavy rain. And that can make it easier for these trees to get toppled over from high winds. And therefore, dealing with more trees that can be toppled over and they can fall on power lines, and it can yield just higher chances of, unfortunately, some power outages in spots as well. So unfortunate side of this as well. So something else to take into consideration is that the fact that we have, saturated soil in place from these rounds of heavy rain as of recent. So it can make that risk of trees being downed and power outages a little higher. With respect, if we had a dry soil with this wind moving into the area. Dave saying still fast moving. Yes, this has been progressing upwards of about 50 miles per hour. So that is the good thing, Dave, with this moving fast, is that it's producing some heavy rain, but it's not staying in the same location long, right? So the overall rainfall amount should still not be real excessive with this line. So thankfully, this flooding concerns likely remain low with this line, and it's more of a severe weather concern. And our flooding threat really at this point is not that any storms are slow moving, it would be the storm's training. So what do I mean by that? It's that if we're dealing with the storm after storm after storm, so it'd be storms just continuously tracking over the same location. That is the flooding concern that we have that would be in place for tomorrow, maybe later tonight, but I think more so for tomorrow, especially into tomorrow afternoon. That potential still there. Now, that being said, it's not a high threat. This isn't a high chance for flooding. It does likely stay more isolated or localized, but nonetheless, the potential is there. And we're going to keep a very close eye on that as we go through tomorrow. Some later tonight, but certainly again as we go through tomorrow. And the potential is there again for tomorrow for some high wind gusts, but I think it does stay more isolated tomorrow. And if we can muster some rain into the morning hours, and a lot of cloud cover as well, I think that severe threat could even end up staying low for tomorrow. So I think even the severe threat for tomorrow is a bit conditional. And tonight, higher risk, I think, for severe weather. Tomorrow, a higher risk for localized flooding. with respect to the two, right? And so tonight, I think higher winds, there's a greater risk for that than localized flooding. And tomorrow, I think there's a little greater risk for localized flooding than for high winds. I think it's going to be a bit reversed tonight and for Thursday. Once we get into Friday, and even by Thursday night, we're likely drying up. Now, from there, the impact to watch for this weekend, especially by Sunday, and then continuing into next week, especially Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday of next week, is excessive heat. So by Sunday, these dew points are back near values this evening. So it's unbearably humid again by Sunday. But by Sunday, our highs are likely in the 90s. So that being said, it's going to feel close to 100 by Sunday, and then it can be 100 plus Monday, Tuesday, at least of next week. So, we're dealing with it just unbearably hot and humid by Sunday, continuing into early next week. So we want to, practice our heat safety tips, and just want to obviously keep hydrated, take some breaks in the shade, air conditioning, and try to find ways to stay cool as it's going to be quite hot, excessively hot is a way to put it by the time we get into Sunday. That'll carry over into early next week. So let's jump back to radar right now. Where was that tornado reported in Ohio? I see one on the map. We can get into that as well, Drew. We can get back to storm reports here in just a minute, and we can check that out. And Ohio County doesn't need more rain. I know, Renee. I don't want to see the rain. Thankfully, there's heavy rain tonight, but thankfully it's going to move pretty quick. So the good news is it's not going to stay over a location very long. So thankfully it's progressing fast enough where it's initial burst of some heavy rain, but it doesn't last long. So that is good. I know we don't want to see any more heavy downpours, but unfortunately we can see some tonight, and we can deal with even more, unfortunately, for tomorrow's. We're going to keep a very close eye on it, but hopefully, it does not yield any more flooding here into the Ohio Valley. So yeah, Drew, we'll get to that. We'll get back to the storm reports in just a minute. And Suzanne was saying that's up by Cleveland, that tornado reported. Had there been severe thunderstorm warnings issued? Christopher is asking. We did have severe thunderstorm warning. We had a tornado warning as well. That was in Columbiana County, the very northeastern portion of Columbiana County. So that was even north of Lisbon, north of East Liverpool, was not impacting those areas. It was moving through Salem, Columbiana, into those areas in Columbiana County, and then making its way into the northern part of Beaver County. So it was not, impacting the southern part of Columbiana County at all. That was our one warning that we were tracking so far. As it stands now with this line, not quite yet. We have severe thunderstorm warnings that are looking back to Muskingum, Coshocton, Holmes County, Stark County. So it's just west of us that we're dealing with those severe thunderstorm warnings, but we have not had a warning issued into our area yet, but could very well see those warnings extended further east into our area. We're under severe thunderstorm watch, which means that there is potential for severe thunderstorms for our area. That watch is until 3 a.m., but I think it's likely going to be canceled before that, as the threat should really start to fall off, at least for our area, even by around midnight. And I don't think it's going to last until 3 a.m. We're going to see a lot of this likely, by 10 o'clock impacting areas in Tuscarawas, Guernsey, Noble, and then closer to 11 o'clock, between 11 o'clock midnight, likely then moving through the northern panhandle is a rough estimate of time when we'll likely be dealing with this line of some strong to severe thunderstorms. So Chris, we're asking where are the storms right now. So again, they're back into east central Ohio. So we're seeing them now moving into the western part of Coshocton County. They're impacting the western part of Holmes County. That's where Amish country is. And not quite into Muskingum County in the Zanesville area, but it's on the doorstep there, moving through Lincoln County, getting ready to move into Muskingum County. So it's not quite to that I-77 corridor yet. It's still not into our area yet, but we'll be watching here in the next hour. Likely we'll start to move into locations along I-77. So watch into these locations closer towards 10 o'clock. And then as we get closer to 11 o'clock, we're going to start to see this advance into further into areas in eastern Ohio past 11 o'clock, but likely before midnight, then impacting the northern panhandle. And then I think once we get past midnight, it'll be more into the western part of PA. So really, once we get to around midnight, we should start to see potential for severe weather start to subside for our area. So there's a look at the storm reports, and there's some tornado reports there. Looks like we had some. Oh, excuse me, don't want to do that. Looks like we had some back into portions of Illinois. We did have the closest one here to us was up around areas into northern part of Ohio. Let's see, where is this? There's Toledo, Cleveland, near Sandusky. So Norwalk area, Sandusky area up near Cedar Point, well, just south of Cedar Point, but in that vicinity. That's where we saw the tornado reports. We can get an idea of what these exactly were. So several funnel clouds observed going halfway down, then lifting, and Monroeville was that report at 3:32. Let's check the other one here. And this one was possible funnel cloud near Mormon Yard train station, Bellevue. So reports of some funnel clouds, and the National Weather Service office in Cleveland would be the one to go to that. May very well go there. And as they assess any damage in that location, even though there wasn't much reports of any actual wind damage in that area, report further south near Richmond. But if they go and assess any damage, then they may confirm a tornado there. But it looks like primarily funnel clouds reported, spotted there near Norwalk. And let's see, we did have, looks like one just popped up there near Akron. So this was the storm. This was part of the storm that we were tracking, making its way. The one towards Columbiana County have not had any reports yet. That was our one severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warning that moved through the northeastern portion of Columbiana County. But let's see what this one is. This is near Akron. So that is funnel cloud observed, pea-sized hail, 40 to 45 mile per hour winds. North of Talmadge at Graham and Fish Creek Roads was that storm report there. But again, a lot of what we're going to see, it's less of that, and it's more of, well, this. It's a lot of this, and that the potential is certainly there, more so for some high winds than any tornadoes with this line. And this is what the line has had a history of producing, is some gusty winds with this as it's moved across Indiana, the western part of Ohio, now moving through central Ohio, and that potential there, unfortunately, still there for us here into eastern Ohio as well. So let's go back to radar and catch up where we are with this latest here. And we're seeing that line now move into east central Ohio. Severe thunderstorm warning not quite in effect for our area. They may issue one here in a little bit. Once these get further into Coshocton and Muskingum County, they may go ahead and extend that warning into a portion of our area. And again, in an hour at about 10 o'clock is when we'll likely see this move into locations into Tuscarawas, as well as Guernsey and Noble County. And then by the time we extend closer towards midnight, it'll be through the northern panhandle. I think by about midnight, it's likely more out of our area. So it's that 2-hour window to watch this move through our region, roughly between 10 o'clock and midnight. So by midnight, I think those lines is moving out, and our severe risk will start to subside. So obviously the timing there, it's going to be on the latter end of it towards the northern panhandle and closer to 10 o'clock along that I-77 corridor. We can map this out again and give a rough estimate of time with this line. If we were to draw this up and then move this towards the east, and we can get a rough estimate of times. And the rough estimate of times there, getting closer to 10 o'clock along that I-77 corridor, and then leading up closer to 11 o'clock, midnight, then as we get closer to the northern panhandle. And by midnight, then it should start to move into the western part of PA. So by the time we get to midnight, the severe risk should start to fall off. And the watch, it goes until 3, but I'm going to guess that they'll start to trim this back. So for us, it's likely not going to continue up till that mark. So, if you're trying to stay up with these storms, I don't think we're going to have to stay up all the way to 3 a.m. I think by the time it gets to be about midnight, these are going to be making their way out of our area. And I think the watch is going to end up being canceled around that time. And, we don't have to wait up, I think, past that. I don't think it's going to go all the way till 3 a.m. There can still be some showers and thunderstorms that do linger following this line, but the potential for severe weather will start to fall off. And then we'll watch as there's, I would say, A low risk. I won't say it's zero, but I would say a low risk for flooding later tonight. And I think a little higher risk than for tomorrow, especially into tomorrow afternoon for localized flooding. And I think a low risk for severe weather for tomorrow afternoon. So I think that's what to watch for at this point as we go through tonight as well as through tomorrow. By tomorrow evening, then the rain, the risk, the fall off, we get into a much drier stretch of weather into the weekend that'll carry over into early next week. So Carol asking, when will it be in Hancock County? So likely closer to 11 o'clock, maybe a little bit past that, when to watch there in Hancock County. So getting closer to 11 o'clock, likely, Carol. Thanks for the info. Nicole says you're welcome there. Thank you all for tuning into this edition of 880. I really appreciate it. Does it look like it's starting to weaken to you? Suzanne is asking. Let's go back and look at look at what radar is showing here. So still looks like it's maintaining some pretty good strength there, moving across central and east central Ohio. It could, still weaken some for us here to eastern Ohio. I do think it's possible for it to weaken some. There's definitely a good amount of fuel still available for these thunderstorms, though. So we'll see. It may be a matter of, excuse me, which is going to win out for us here into eastern Ohio. As we start to lose some of that daytime heating as the sun sets, but there's still a decent amount of fuel with that latest sounding that the National Weather Service office in Pittsburgh did note, that they did note. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Just reported as well in Cleveland, 81 mile per hour gust. Wow. Likely not going to see 80 here. Likely not, but that's a very high wind gust. That's some serious damage reported there in Cleveland area. But I don't think we're going to see that. I don't think we're getting wind gusts up to 80 miles per hour. Still possibly up to 60, maybe as high as 70, but I don't think we're getting those wind gusts upwards of 80 plus miles per hour. Not for our area, but that is wow, that's bad to see there, Cleveland. In the Cleveland area, report of an 81 mile per hour wind gusts. Also report in Lincoln County. That's where we're seeing that storm just move out of right now, moving past Lincoln County, and it's moving into, so coming out of Lincoln County, that's here near Newark. That's moving into Muskingum County now. Gusts to 48 miles per hour. So still some gusty winds there reported at the Newark Airport and Lincoln County. Report of a gust to 48 miles per hour. And still, if we deal with some of those wind gusts, even upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Again, with that saturated soil, unfortunately, we still can deal with some downed trees and unfortunately some power outages tonight. It's unfortunate. That's just a side note. That's something to consider with these rounds of heavy rain. The soil is saturated, and it can make it a little bit easier for winds to topple trees this time of the year. When trees do have leaves on them and we have a saturated soil, it can make it easier for those winds to bring down trees and therefore easier to cause some power outages. So that is something else that we're going to be taking into consideration. It's unfortunate as we watch this line move through the area. Judy says, don't need more rain. I know. Certainly don't want to see it. It's unfortunate. Thankfully, this is moving fast, though. So, it's still some heavy rain with this line, but it's moving fast. So ultimately the amount of rain that actually is recorded as this moves through is likely not going to be too much. So not to the point likely that we're dealing with flooding, but it is still going to be some heavy downpours. But with a fast movement, it should keep that flooding risk low for us with this line as it moves east across the area. Suzanne was mentioning that this afternoon she thought the Weather Channel mentioned winds report 101 miles per hour. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'd be interested to know where that was, Suzanne. That's very bad to see winds reported to that extent. Likely back more so towards Indiana. The line certainly stronger looking back towards Indiana. And even dealing with more tornadoes reported back into Illinois. So certainly we saw the worst of this line further west of our area. But for that being said, while I don't think we're getting the worst of this, we still fortunately can deal with some gusty winds as this makes its way through our area. What is the deadliest day for thunderstorms? Christopher is asking. I'm not sure what you're asking there, Christopher. There's not a specific day. Obviously risk for thunderstorms is there with any thunderstorm. I mean, you don't want to be caught outdoors, right? When thunder roars go indoors, right? So within any thunderstorm, lightning is always a concern. Obviously dealing with tornado concerns with any severe thunderstorms. Obviously dealing with flooding concerns with those heavy downpours within thunderstorms, but I'm not really sure what you're asking there, Christopher. Should people avoid driving cars or walking outside? And with this line moving through, I would, yeah. I mean, I don't think you want to be caught outside with this line moving through. And I don't think you'd want to be driving as this line moves through either. Those winds can blow you around on the road, especially in a higher profile vehicle. And certainly that initial heavy burst of rain as it moves through can make it for some difficult driving as well. So yes, I think that's certainly good advice to not want to do that. What month is the deadliest month for severe weather? I don't know, Christopher. I don't know off the top of my head. That would be something I'd have to look at for you. And I'm not sure off the top of my head, Christopher. Chicago. Oh, Suzanne says Chicago. Chicago is where that was. The high winds. And Crystal says, I think the winds were that high back in Kansas yesterday. And yeah, that's terrible. Terrible to hear the winds reaching 100+ miles per hour. That's certainly some high damage with wind speeds to that extent. So that's horrible to hear those wind speeds that high back further towards our west. Terry says, hopefully it moves fast enough to not cause too much, if any, damage. Can't wait for nice weather. I know, Terry, I think we're all looking forward to, thankfully, some dry weather returning by this weekend and even by Friday. That will likely carry over into early next week. So we were certainly going to be looking forward to that. Coming our way. Yes. And in terms of moves fast enough to not cause too much, if any, damage, I think that can thankfully keep the flooding concerns low. So that's certainly good that if it's moving fast enough, it can keep flooding concerns low. But unfortunately, I don't think that can stop us from dealing with some high wind gust with this line as it moves through the area. Deborah asking, are there tornado watches or high wind besides heavy rain for Moundsville? So tornado potential looks low with this, Deborah. It's more of just dealing with some initial bursts of some high winds as this moves through. So you can see some high winds as this line moves through. But in terms of a tornado, that potential does look low with this line. And no tornado watches, no. But we do have a severe thunderstorm watch. So that is put in place when there is a lower risk for a tornado, but still a high risk to deal with some high winds or large hail. And we do have the severe thunderstorm watch that's in effect until 3 a.m. for our area, although I don't think the risk will last until that point. Likely getting closer towards midnight, I think that risk will then start to drop off for that potential for severe weather. So we have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect, not a tornado watch. Again, that just means that there's not a big risk for tornadoes, so we don't have a tornado watch, but there is still a concern for those high winds, and that's why we have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect. So yes, we can unfortunately still deal with some high winds in addition to that quick burst of some heavy rain into Moundsville as this moves through our area. Jenna says, yes, we need some dry weather. I couldn't agree more. Certainly going to be looking forward to it, returning likely by Friday. Even by Thursday night, we're likely drying up. And then we are good chance to stay dry. I think there's a slight chance at most for any shower or thunderstorm from Friday all the way into next Tuesday, maybe even next Wednesday. So that's why I say we can string together even possibly a handful of days of dry weather. So it is certainly good to see. And with this weather pattern, it does favor dry conditions, but it also favors some hot conditions, which is what we're going to see. So while this pattern that we're going to be in favors mainly dry, if not completely dry conditions, quite a bit of sunshine. It also is going to allow those temperatures to ramp up into the 80s by Saturday, and then likely in the 90s by Sunday. And we are into the 90s into the first half of next week before we'll drop back into the 80s, likely late next week. And it's unbearably humid by Sunday. So it is hot and it's unbearably humid, and it's just excessively hot and almost dangerously hot by Sunday into early next week. So certainly good to see the dry weather, but unfortunate that it is met with some concerns for excessive heat into early next week. The Christopher mentioning those excessive heat values, so the heat index value, when we factor in the heat and humidity, yes, can exceed 100 degrees, depending on how high those temperatures reach Sunday into early next week. So excessive heat watches and warnings should be issued. We're probably going to have some heat products issued by the National Weather Service. Yes, we'll probably see some issued, especially by Sunday. Probably not so much Saturday. It's still well in the 80s Saturday, but the humidity is not really high at that point. But especially by Sunday and at least Monday and Tuesday of next week, at least that stretch, I would say Sunday through Tuesday, at least we have the potential for dealing with some of that excessive heat, possibly reaching upwards about 100 Sunday. And I think it can actually get above 100 Monday and into Tuesday of next week. Monday and Tuesday look to be the worst in terms of the highest temperatures and that high humidity. I think those are 2 days that are the worst early next week. Should people in Zanesville and Cambridge get to their safe places? It's certainly good to be seeking shelter. Yes. You don't want to be, caught outside in these storms. You obviously want to be seeking some shelter in a, sturdy structure as this line does move through. And as we were talking, there's our severe thunderstorm warning that did pop up. So the National Weather Service office in Pittsburgh went ahead and extended that warning. So let's actually jump into, and we'll get an idea of the timing of this. Now there's a lot popping up here. So let's see if we can get the right one. There we go. So there's our warning until 10:15 p.m. That's severe thunderstorm warning that was just issued here recently by the National Weather Service office in Pittsburgh. And this will include then until 10:15. The wind speeds 60 miles per hour. So you'll notice the hail, not the concern with this. It's those high winds, potential there for wind gusts upwards of 60 miles per hour. And this extends, we'll drop this box out of here again so we get a better view of it again. So this watch that was issued, this extends from the western portion of Columbiana County, that's west of Salem, down through the good portion there, central western part of Carroll County, that includes Carrollton, all of Tuscarawas County, the western part of Harrison, so not quite to Caddis, but west of Caddis, that's severe thunderstorm warning. Then this includes almost all of Guernsey, just a very small sliver of Guernsey left out of it, but almost all of Guernsey, a portion there of Belmont County. This is just west of Flushing. That includes Fairview. This is areas just north and west there, Barnesville, not quite extending into the eastern part of Noble County. So locations in Batesville, not under that, but just west of it. Does include Caldwell. Locations there into central northwestern part of Noble County. So those are the areas under that severe thunderstorm warning that was just issued. Again, goes up until 10:15. Potential there for those high wind gusts upwards of about 60 miles per hour. Jerry says Cambridge is going to set watch go by. Oh, joining us from Cambridge, you're going to watch. Yeah, you're under that severe thunderstorm warning now, Jerry, in Cambridge. Again, the potential for wind gusts up is about 60 miles per hour there into Guernsey County, Cambridge area, including Tuscarawas, New Philadelphia, Dover areas near Caldwell, just west there of Caddis, towards Tappan Lake locations. Then we look further towards the west and to those areas. A lot of Carroll County, including Carrollton, and the very western portion of Columbiana County. So those are the locations there. The National Weather Service office in Pittsburgh just went ahead and issued that severe thunderstorm warning. And again, we're going to continue to track this progressing further east then across our area as we do extend throughout the night. So we're going to continue to monitor this. Now, by the time this is reaching us, we're unfortunately not going to be able to be going live here. We have News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, but you can tune in at 10 o'clock on Fox 9, 11 o'clock on News 9, on NBC, News 9, WTOV 9. And you can we'll continue to track these showers and thunderstorms at that point. So, here it's 9:21. So, we can only go here for about another half hour for this edition of Nate at 8. And then we're going to be jumping on air and we're going to continue that coverage then live on air. So, I urge you to tune over to News 9 at 10 on Fox 9. So if you have Fox 9, 10 o'clock, WTOV 9 or NBC at 11 o'clock. And we're going to continue to track this. And if we're still dealing with severe thunderstorm warnings across the area, after about 11:30, when we go off air, about 11:30, 35, rough estimate, the time when we get off air, then, we can go back live and continue to track what remains. But I really think at that time that a lot of this is going to start to make its exit. So, but if we're still dealing with a lot of warnings in our area, we can go back live. But I really think by the time the 11 o'clock news is wrapping up, a little past 11:30, that it's really going to start to be on the outward trend, right? It's going to start to be on tracking out of our area. So we're really going to notice this move through area for a lot of that time period of 10 to 11:30 for our newscast at 10 and their newscast again at 11. Drew says, I'm going to hop off of here, but I will catch you online at 10. Sounds good. I'll see you then. You have a great night. Stay safe. Thanks so much, Drew. You as well. And again, all of you tuning in, obviously want to be safe tonight. Stay tuned to any warnings that were to be issued. Have multiple ways to get that warning. Smartphone's a great option, and weather radio, great option as well. So if you have a NOAA weather radio smartphone, I think those are honestly the two best ways to get warnings. Behind that, as long as you have power, obviously you can, still use TV is a good way to get it. Tune in to, again, News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. At generic radio, tune into a local station and they'll play those same alerts by the Weather Service of any warning issued for areas here locally, and just have multiple ways to get that warning here early tonight, and be prepared to, seek shelter. Obviously, you don't want to be outside, caught outside in these storms, although really at this time, a lot of us are, heading home and inside already, but just a note, certainly don't want to be caught out outside at these storms as they make their way east across the area. The last 2 nights have been busy for you, Nate also says. This certainly has been an active weather pattern, and is certainly going to be very grateful to see this dry weather return. Not for my sake, no, but just the fact we do not want any more rain. I mean, I'm so thankful to see the fact that we will have a lot less rain in that forecast, and thankfully some quieter conditions, which, all of us are so looking forward to. At this point, we don't want to see any more impactful weather coming our way. But unfortunately, that potential is there. Obviously tonight we're dealing with this line of some strong to severe thunderstorms, and unfortunately tomorrow there still can be some concerns for dealing with some maybe additional high winds. I really don't think there's a big risk for severe weather tomorrow. If we do trend dry tomorrow morning, if we still can muster some sunshine, then it is possible into tomorrow afternoon. I just think there can still be some showers around in the morning. There could be quite a bit of cloud cover. And if that scenario plays out, I just don't think there's a big risk for severe weather going into tomorrow afternoon. We would want to see those dry conditions, and we would want to see more sunshine. And then maybe that potential for some additional high wind gusts and some thunderstorms into tomorrow afternoon. I think the bigger concern tomorrow would be that potential for some localized flooding. And even that, again, I don't think it's a widespread high risk scenario, but nonetheless, it just can't be ruled out. So we still have to closely watch as some of these thunderstorms is still likely have some heavy downpours, even though they may not have some high wind gusts tomorrow. And the issue, if with any flooding concerns, is the fact that we would deal with training of these storms. So it's not that a thunderstorm is causing flooding concerns. It's that a round of thunderstorms can cause flooding concerns. So that is what we're more watching for at this point. Later tonight, some, but certainly again for tomorrow, would be that if we're dealing with that storm after storm over a location, that's where flooding is going to be a much more of a concern, as that's what we call a training of thunderstorms. So that training effect of storms is what to really watch for, and that's what we're going to be keeping a close eye on for tomorrow. And again, once we get to tomorrow evening, thankfully at that point, this rain's likely coming to an end. So even around this time tomorrow, for tomorrow's edition of Nate at 8, we're likely watching an end to that precipitation. And from there, we thankfully look ahead to a much drier stretch of weather in place, starting even by Thursday night and continuing all the way even towards the middle of next week. So it's certainly good to see that, so we can lessen, not have to worry about the impacts of flooding or severe weather. Again, we still have to watch for those excessive heat concerns. It's still the impact to watch for by Sunday into early next week. But just thankful we don't have to deal with the flooding and severe weather concerns continuing on what has been pretty much a daily basis here. So thankfully, we do not see that potential carryover for a lot of our next 7 days. Nate at 8 tomorrow will be as busy, and Suzanne will likely see that start to track that into that precipitation. And we're going to keep a close eye on things. And even if we're not live, of course, you can always tune in tomorrow. News 9 live at 5, so 5 to 6:30. If we're still dealing with some thunderstorms that would be producing any flooding or severe weather concerns, we're going to be tracking it then. If we were to even see something before 5 o'clock, then we can even jump on Facebook and can give you a quick update leading up to 5 o'clock. So, I'm still going to keep a very close eye on things, even when I'm not here at the station. I'm still, as long as I'm not sleeping, I'm keeping an eye on things the best I can, and getting that warning out, if we are dealing with any more flooding or severe weather as we go through tomorrow. So still going to keep a very close eye on things here as we go through tomorrow. Christopher mentioning Wheeling could be next in the severe thunderstorm warning. And when they extend this further to the east, we can see locations, maybe even extending. If they extend it as far east as they did with this previous warning, then it could start to include a lot of the remainder of our area with that next additional warning. Yeah, it could very well, include much of our additional area for sure. All right, everyone. Again, we got to see about 9:30 right now, so we're continuing to track this into our area. Not quite into that I-77 corridor, but it's now making its way very close to Tuscarawas County at this hour, and we're seeing that moving through Coshocton, now moving into areas near Zanesville. We do have a tornado warning up near Akron, and in general up into northern Ohio. Further north of our areas where we've been dealing with more of that tornado concern. For us here, again, that risk is looking low. It's more of the potential then for some high wind gusts, upwards of about 60 miles per hour, that potential right now as this continues to track towards the east. Michael asking, is the flooding risk high or are these faster moving? And Michael, you're touching on just what we've been mentioning at times. You're absolutely right. These are faster moving. So that is the key to that flooding concern tonight. And they are faster moving this line. So while, yes, still that, initial burst there of heavier rain when it moves through, it moves fast enough that it should keep those rainfall amounts light enough to keep the flooding risk low, I think, for tonight. But, I still have to watch. We're still going to closely monitor things. We can still have some showers and thunderstorms in the wake of this line later tonight. There still can be some that do continue. So it is something that we'll continue to monitor. But I do think overall, it's not a high risk flooding concern tonight. I think the next time that I wouldn't say it's high, but I think the time of greater concern looking ahead is more so for tomorrow and really going into tomorrow afternoon. I think that would be the next time period to watch as we can deal. The issue that we're going to be watching for is that training effect of thunderstorms. So it's that storm and then another storm moves right back in and another storm moves right back in. So you get with that training effect, or the storms continuously moving over the same location. And then that's where that unfortunately flooding concern can come into play. Some tonight, I won't say the risk is completely zero tonight. It's some, but I think a little higher risk for tomorrow. And more specifically going into tomorrow afternoon, where we can get some of those heavier downpours to redevelop those storms and showers. It could be a bit heavier going into tomorrow afternoon, even with respect to tomorrow morning. So we're still watching that. By tomorrow evening, then we'll see what does remain, taper off, a much drier stretch of weather than likely for not only tomorrow night, but for this weekend and even through early next week. So we are looking forward to that. We stay vigilant here over the next roughly 24 hours. And then from there, we can get more of a sigh of relief and thankfully not have to track that potential for severe weather or flooding, but more so for excessive heat. So it is still something worth noting. It's still something of an impact. It's just thankfully not any flooding or severe weather concerns that we're going to be tracking into early next week. It's just how hot it's going to get. So I, still want to be practicing our heat safety, be there for your friends, loved ones, your neighbors, especially those that have been impacted from the recent flooding going through this past weekend, and, be there for them, offer them a place to go and cool down, right? And help them stay cool going throughout that hot stretch, because that excessive heat is certainly still something of concern, and we don't want to take that lightly. But it is still certainly nice to see that fact that we are not going to be tracking, more severe weather or more flooding concerns on a daily basis from Friday going into early next week. So certainly good in that regard as we look ahead. There's a line just now, a sliver there of Tuscarawas County making its way. This is not quite the I-77 corridor, but it is certainly getting much closer. 9:30 mark, so it could very likely going to be making its way to the very western portion of those areas, even a little bit before 10 o'clock, and then continuing to progress further towards the east. This severe thunderstorm warning is in effect until 10:15. And then we watch this continuously track further to the east in our area. They may very well extend this then further towards the east as we continue to track this line moving east across the area. This has had a history of producing, a lot of storm reports. We can look back to some of what we have for the latest storm reports. I think overall the brunt force of this, certainly the worst of this, is likely going to remain to the west. That's where we're likely still going to see the worst of this. Now, it doesn't mean we're not going to see any. I'm not going to see any impacts. I don't say that. But I think in terms of those really high wind gusts and more severe wind damage is likely going to be the brunt force of this likely occurred further to the west. For us, again, that potential is still there for high winds that can bring trees down, especially with the fact that we have that saturated soil from these rounds of heavy rain as of recent, which makes it a little easier for that wind to topple trees and then therefore for those trees to fall on power lines and cause power outages. So unfortunately, it can be a bit easier for that to occur. And we have the potential still for some gusty winds with this moving through. So yes, we can unfortunately see power outages occur in our area tonight. So that being said, it not honestly bad right now to prepare for that, right? Have your phone charged up. If you got some battery packs, charge them up, those portable phone chargers, portable batteries, right? Whatever you have, obviously now's the time to prepare for a potential power outage. Yes, it can occur for us tonight. It can. And still looking at some of the latest numbers from Power Outage US and seeing where it currently stand at 152,117 power outages in Indiana. And for Ohio, it's 177,760. Now, where we've seen this track through East Central Ohio, Lincoln County, that's Newark area, getting close towards Columbus. That's 5,896 customers reported without power. Coshocton, only 423, but it's moving through that area. 532 in Holmes, again, moving through that area right now. Knox County, 1,059. And as we look back further to the west, Franklin County, which includes Columbus, that's 13,243. So we've been dealing with quite a bit of power outages as we look back further towards the west. And again, the total in Ohio is 177,760. So we're still tracking quite a bit of power outages. And again, it's unfortunate that when this does reach us, that with that saturated soil, that potential is there for some power outages, some down trees with this line moving through. Severe thunderstorm watch is in effect to our area till 3 a.m. So keep in mind when a watch is issued, this is the time to prepare, right? So anytime you see a watch, if it's severe thunderstorm watch, if it's a flood watch, if it's a tornado watch, anytime you see a watch issued, that means the threat is not imminent, right? And not imminent, but now's the time to prepare. So if you see a watch issued, that's the time to say to yourself, okay, I need to be prepared in case a warning were to be issued. So, in the event of a tornado, right, thinking under a tornado watch, where's my safe place? Where am I going to go if a tornado warning is issued? Severe thunderstorm watch, keep in mind, well, I need to be, mindful of where these storms are and be prepared to get inside and seek shelter, not get caught outside if a severe thunderstorm were to develop. And also, keep in mind, what am I going to do if the power goes out, right? Be prepared in case of a possible power outages. And of course, with flood watch, obviously, right, you want to be prepared on where you're going to go in the event of a flood watch. If you do live into flood prone location, you'll be prepared to seek higher ground in the event of a flood warning. So that's the thing. If a warning is issued, that's when it's imminent or ongoing. So that is when to execute the plan. So watch, prepare, warning, execute. Watch, prepare, warning, execute. That's the best way to think of it. So anytime a watch is issued, plan, prepare. A warning is issued, execute, right? A warning's issued, execute. That's the big difference between the watch and the warning. So we do have that watch in effect till 3 a.m. This likely is not going to continue all the way up to 3 a.m. It's likely going to be canceled before that. But we do have some severe thunderstorm warnings in effect for our area. So right now is the time to execute the plan, right? And that's including into locations into Tuscarawas, Guernsey, Noble County, into Harrison, as well as Carroll County, the very western part of Columbiana County. That severe thunderstorm warning in effect until 10:15 p.m. We could very well see this continue to be extended further east, but as it stands now, that's where that severe thunderstorm warning is. That line is just now starting to enter a sliver there of the I-77 corridor. So just now entering a sliver there into Tuscarawas County. Naomi, good evening. What time will it hit Wheeling? Likely closer to about 11 o'clock, Michael, by the time it does reach Wheeling. So still got a little over an hour likely by the time it reaches Wheeling. And then by midnight, I think it's really moving out of our area. It starts to move out of our area. Carrie says just got alert for Tuscarawas County. So yes, you're under that severe thunderstorm warning. The potential there, Carrie, for those gusts up to about 60 miles per hour. So some high winds. You'll notice initially that bursts of some heavier rain, some high winds. That will likely be what's most noticeable with this line as it makes its way through the area. With some high winds, and you'll hear the winds pick up. The rain will be heavy as it passes. Maybe some rumbles of thunder with this as well. And that's what's going to be most notable when this line moves through. Tornado risk is more further north of our area. We have less of that risk. We have less of a large hail risk and more of just a high wind risk as we see this move through the area. Carrie says, thank you. You're welcome, Carrie. Thank you. You were welcome. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. All of you tuning in to this edition of Nate at 8. And we're still continuing to watch this line. And again, keep in mind, if you're just now tuning in, unfortunately, we will be having to go off here closer to 10 o'clock. So here in a little bit, we're going to be ending this edition of Nate at 8. We're going to be going live then on air at 10 o'clock. So tune in if you can. News 9 at 10 on Fox 9. News 9 tonight at 11, which is on NBC WTOV9. Now, some of you, if you're tuning in and you don't get our channel, or maybe you don't have a way to watch it, you can go to our website, WTOV9.com, and that's where we do then also where we do live stream our broadcast as well. So even if you aren't quite in our coverage area maybe, or maybe you don't typically pick us up, or you don't have a way, that's another way you can watch WTOV9.com. Typically, I believe we stream our newscast live on the website as well. It's another way to be able to tune in and watch. Again, 10 o'clock on Fox 9, and then 11 o'clock it'll be on WTOV9 on the NBC channel. But this line just now moving into Tuscarawas County. Still that capability of producing some of these wind gusts upwards of about 60 miles per hour. And that's going to be our primary concern. Another report coming in. This is at Coshocton Richard Downey Airport. That's the airport in Coshocton County. So Coshocton is this county right here. So this is there's Coshocton. So report coming out of Coshocton at 43 mile per hour wind gust reported at 9:15 p.m. And also noting dispatch in Coshocton getting a number of calls due to the storm. So evidence there that dealing with some damage across Coshocton County, getting a number of calls due to the storm. So still some evidence of some high winds and some wind damage moving through Coshocton County. And even if we're dealing with wind gusts upwards of 50 miles per hour, I still think that can be high enough with the saturated soils to, we don't necessarily need 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts to still deal, unfortunately, with some wind damage as this moves through. Even just some gusty winds in general still can be enough with the saturated soil to still topple some trees, still cause some power outages. And this is still maintaining enough strength to still produce wind gusts, at least in excess of 40 miles per hour, which is already observed there at the airport in Coshocton County. So still some gusty winds are being observed with this line as it progresses further to the east. And there is still potential to see those wind gusts reach up closer to 60 miles per hour. Likely not going to get anything much higher than that, maybe at most up to 70, but likely nothing real high that would exceed that with this line. But still, again, even just some gusty winds can unfortunately be enough to still cause some power outages in our area. It's still enough to bring down some trees with the saturated soil. So yes, we still can have, unfortunately, some wind damage with this line, some power outages with this line as it does make its way across our area. That potential is there across the area. Severe thunderstorm warning still not in effect for the eastern part of our area, but it is in effect for Tuscarawas. Again, a lot of Carroll, Harrison, portion there in Noble County, Guernsey County, western part of Columbiana County. That's where that severe thunderstorm warning currently is in effect, and it's until 10:15 p.m. That severe thunderstorm warning is in effect again until 10:15 p.m. That severe thunderstorm warning. These have been moving upwards about 50 miles per hour as this has moved its way east across the area. It's a roughly that's about how fast it's been moving, Suzanne, as we've been tracking these moving across Ohio. So again, thankfully that's pretty quick. So while yes, we still can get some heavy downpours initially with this line, it's moving fast enough that it keeps rainfall amounts likely to the point where nothing's excessive over a given area, right? Because it's moving fast enough. So still some heavy rain, but the fact that it's moving fast enough, it should keep a lot of these rainfall amounts light, certainly light enough to keep that flooding risk low, thankfully. So more so severe concerns, less so flooding concerns with this line as it makes its way east across the area. And again, it's impacting locations now, really now getting to that I-77 over Tuscarawas County, moving into the western part of Tuscarawas County and western part of Guernsey County, and not quite made its way into Noble County. Still seeing that line extending back further into areas near Zanesville in Muskingum County. So not quite made its way further towards areas into Noble County yet. Severe thunderstorm warning again in effect until 10:15 p.m. We'll watch for this line progressing towards the northern panhandle, likely closer to 11. So by midnight, I really think a lot of this is wrapping up, and we'll see that severe thunderstorm watch. It's in effect till 3 a.m., but I don't think we have to wait until 3 a.m. to see our severe risk subside. So if you're waiting out these storms tonight and staying up for them, I think if you could stay up to about midnight, I think once we get past that, I think the severe risk is going to start to fall off. So I think this is going to end up being trimmed back and canceled before we even get to 3 a.m., which is typical. It's a good practice. A lot of times the watches, they're extended even a little past the expected time. Just it's a safety guard thing, right? And then trimming back the watch as we watch, continue to see these storms track further towards the east. But it's in effect till 3 a.m., likely going to be trimmed back and eventually canceled before we get to 3 a.m., at least for our area. May continue those severe concerns past midnight into western central PA, further out of our area. But for us in eastern Ohio, the northern panhandle, as we get closer to midnight, we'll likely see that severe risk likely start to subside. A lot of storm reports coming from this line. As you can see, the majority of it has been wind damage and wind gusts. Those high wind gusts recorded, wind damage reported. That's what we've seen a lot of coming out of Indiana through western Ohio. There's been some tornado reports, mainly in northern Ohio, but certainly what we've seen more of an abundance of has just been some high winds, and that's what we're going to continue to what's going to continue to be the primary concern as this does move through our area. This line is extending from northern Ohio all the way into southern Ohio, so this line is extending across Ohio, and we'll deal with this line likely extending across our area. Johnny's saying stay safe. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely stay safe for tonight, and make sure to seek shelter as this line is moving through the area. And we deal with some high winds. Unfortunately, again, be prepared for potential power outages. We can have some downed trees from this, so be prepared for potential power outages, at least in spots. Not to say it's widespread, but we can at least have it in spots. So yes, the potential is there for power outages in our area and some downed trees with this as it makes its way east across the region. And the unfortunate side to this is that, with these rounds of heavy rain, that soil is saturated. So with respect to soil that would have been dry, it makes it a little easier for these gusty winds to topple trees. And if you're dealing with more trees down, then, naturally dealing with then more power outages. So that is the unfortunate side with this that we're going to be tracking here into the first half of tonight. Carrie says, I appreciate all your time and info. Well, thank you. That's very kind words, Carrie. I appreciate that. Thank you. You're very welcome. Shauna, good evening. Good evening to you. Thank you all for tuning in on this Wednesday evening. I appreciate it as always to join me on this edition of Nate at 8. And we've been tracking some severe weather moving into the area, into our area, into eastern Ohio, the northern panhandle. Again, high winds. Wind gust potential up to about 60 miles per hour. And we'll deal with some gusty winds, some initial round of some heavier rains, rumbles of thunder. That's what we're going to notice the most with this as it makes its way across the area. So some more questions. Thank you for going live. You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in, Summer. And I also have a question. So is there any severe weather in the St. Clairsville area? So yes, that potential is there into St. Clairsville to deal with severe weather. Not under a warning yet, but the line is tracking that way into St. Clairsville. Likely will be there a little bit before 11 o'clock. So between 10:30 and 11 likely for St. Clairsville. A little bit before 11. So it's on its way, not quite into St. Clairsville yet. The warning, again, not into St. Clairsville yet, but we're seeing that warning centered into locations just west of there, and most locations, as you can see, into Carroll, a western part of Harrison, just west of Caddis, including all of their Tuscarawas, most of Guernsey, good portion of Noble, very northwestern portion of Belmont. So it covers a lot of the western part of our area. And we could very well see this extended further to the east as we would continue to watch this line progress through our region. And again, keep in mind, coming up, News 9 at 10 on Fox 9. So we will be getting off here shortly to go live on air at 10 o'clock on Fox 9, and then 11 o'clock on WTOV 9. So, if you can't get us, on Fox 9 or on NBC on WTOV 9, tune into our website, WTOV9.com. I'm almost positive that the newscasts are live streamed there as well. So another way to be able to watch is on our website, WTOV9.com. And should be able to watch the newscast there as well. But those are the ways. Again, fortunately, we can't stay live here, but we're going to be going live on air. We'll continue to give you updates throughout the evening. And as well, I'll be trying to post any updates on my social media as well, Nathan Shutt News 9. And if you're on X, it's InShut WTOV. So with the time that we have here left, a couple more minutes, let's jump to the 9+1 day forecast. And again, you can get the social media on there. So Nathan Shutt News 9, InShut WTOV, and posting updates, even outside of our live streams is a good way to get updates, posted updates throughout this afternoon, even before our edition of Nate at 8. As we've been tracking this line moving through Western Ohio earlier into the afternoon, and continue to post updates even after this live stream here early on tonight. So just a good tool to, good way to stay tuned for some updates, as I'll be posting some updates there, as well as being live on air, News 9 at 10 on Fox 9 and News 9 tonight at at 11. Carrie saying definitely windy in Wainwright. So getting some of those winds moving through Tuscarawas County where Carrie's tuning in right now. And again, what Carrie's dealing with is on its way further east across our area. So dealing with some of those gusty winds moving across our region. So on our 9+1 day forecast, what we notice, of course, what really stands out, that sun icon, right? And thankfully, that is a lot of our future here over the next week, especially, is a quiet stretch of weather. We get into a pattern of what we call a ridge. So a ridge is developing over the eastern part of the U.S., and under the ridge, heat builds. And when we're under the ridge, typically we get some sunny days, quiet weather, but the heat builds. And that's certainly what we're going to see happen with this upper air pattern. The heat builds and temperatures by Saturday are pushing 90. We're likely in the 90s by Sunday. And again, by Sunday is when it's unbearably humid. So we do have some relief from the humidity Friday and into Saturday, but it's back to how it feels now by Sunday, just unbearably humid. And that will continue for a lot of next week. So the issue, of course, then is the temperatures climb further into the 90s Monday and Tuesday, and it's still unbearably humid. It's going to feel likely like it's into the 100s. So the excessive heat is certainly a concern even really by Sunday. I mean, even this weekend is hot, but that real excessive heat, the hottest of it, is likely Monday and into Tuesday. The heat index can exceed 100 degrees. That's just how hot it feels. When you factor in the heat and the humidity, it can feel 100 plus. The heat index, the factor as we factor it in, why does it feel hotter to us? Well, it's just the fact that we're dealing with so much humidity in the air and moisture in the air that the sweat that our body's producing, it's not evaporating, which does a number of things. Number one, because it's not evaporating as much, that's when we get sweaty. I know, not pleasant sight to think, not pleasant to think of, but that's when we get sweaty because that sweat is not evaporating off our skin. So on those hot, humid days, that's why we tend to get more sweaty. Number two, because that sweat is not evaporating, we're not cooling. That's actually a cooling effect. So that's what we call evaporative cooling. So as the sweat evaporates off of our skin, it helps cool us. It's our body's natural way to cool down. But if that process isn't occurring, we're not cooling down, and ultimately we feel hotter. So we're more sweaty and we feel hotter. And that's the science behind what we call the heat index. So that's why it feels hotter to us when it's humid and it's hot. And that's unfortunately our future here going into early next week. So nice that, for a lot of the stretch, we are not dealing with, severe weather concerns. We're not dealing with flooding concerns, right? But the excessive heat is certainly still a concern. We still want to be checking up on our loved ones, our neighbors, right? We want to be checking up on friends, family, neighbors during that stretch of hot weather. We'll offer them a place if maybe they don't have air conditioning or they've been recently affected by this flooding. Offer them a place to come in, right? Be there for each other, really, during this time of need. And be there for each other, help them, get through this hot stretch of weather. It's certainly nice. It'll help dry things out, right? It's nice in that regard, but the excessive heat, we don't want to see either, but unfortunately, we'll likely be dealing with that going into early next week. So, and again, as always, continuously every day, my thoughts and prayers are still with those who have been affected by the flooding as of recent. It was just horrific, horrendous, historic. It was just awful to see. And, every day my thoughts and prayers are still with those that were impacted by that flooding, and certainly, now's the time to be there for each other, right? Be there for each other in this time and, help those that were impacted, offer them a place to come in, right? Cool down, get out of that heat as we look ahead into early next week. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. Again, we got to hop off here and we're going to jump on air. News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. Also check out WTOV9.com. I believe we'll stream our newscast there live on WTOV9.com in case you don't get us over the air. And tune in to Nathan Shutt, News 9, in Shut WTOV. I'll be keeping updated posts going throughout this evening on my social media as well. So just another good way to stay tuned to the weather for the latest updates here as we do extend through tonight and as well as for tomorrow. Continue to keep posting updates tomorrow as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Have a good, safe night. And I'll see all of you on the next edition of Nate at 8. And maybe if you tune in on air as well. Have a good night.